Welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. Joining me as always is Savio Rodriguez, and we are going to be dissecting the Manipur issue because problems are flaring up again. But this time we are going to take a little bit of a deep dive. And may I request all of you to please like this video, and if you have not subscribed to our channel, to kindly subscribe to our channel. Let's welcome our guest of the day, Savio Rodriguez. Savio, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing very good, Sree. How are you?
Savio, I see some crackling of noise.
1 second.
So I am hearing my voice coming back as crackling.
I'm hearing crackling sound from your end as well.
Yeah.
Is it clear now?
Hello? I think it is
coming from your end.
No, it's coming from your side. While we wait for him, let's take a quick look at how we can auto subscribe to PGurus channels. Here we go.
Now?
Yes, it's much better now, Savio. Go ahead.
My apologies. Thank you, Sree, for inviting me on your program. The whole purpose of wanting to speak to you today is because we are completing about a year of in sadness rather of the conflict that happened in Manipur and the conflict that still persists even now. Exactly a year back, Manipur was set on fire. Manipur was set on fire, and there are many stories that have been floating over the last 1 year from different sources, different intent, different agenda, to convolute, to confuse, and to further divide and accentuate the problem that is in Manipur. There is no saint in Manipur, is a statement I've been making from the first time I visited Manipur during the time of the conflict. There is no saint, but there are many victims that people would like to project themselves as, and then there are genuinely people who have been victimized and people who have seen their lives wither away with very little hope of reconciliation and very little hope of getting back to living in parts of Manipur that they consider to be their own. The problem in Manipur for a lot of period of time was portrayed and is still portrayed to be a religious conflict in pockets where religious influence works strongly. In fact, yesterday when I attended Sunday Mass at one of the churches in Goa, and I heard about the Sunday Mass in other churches as well, in some of the churches, Manipur was the topic of discussion. It was a topic of discussion primarily because Goa goes to vote tomorrow. The whole purpose of that discussion, based on a one-sided opinion of the problem in Manipur, based on the fact that no priest who was talking about it at the masses that I am aware of has been to Manipur. There are a lot of stories floating around in the Christian community. There's a lot of stories floating around in the Hindu community. And it's like a coin that has two sides. But there is a truth to what is happening in Manipur and what has happened in Manipur and what will happen in Manipur. Manipur is a state that is going through a conflict. And in order for the conflict to be resolved and further violence to be avoided, there is an imminent need for strict measures in dealing with the conflict and the violence in Manipur. Then only there can be any attempt at a reconciliation between the communities. So what really is the hidden truth about the conflict in Manipur? The hidden truth about the conflict in Manipur is that Manipur was set on fire. It is not something that just took off on May 3rd. I have said it on television channels that on April 29th, there was already foreign media present in Manipur. How would the foreign media know that there is a probability of a flare-up? The decision on the High Court on the ST reservations to the Meities community came on April 19th. On April 21st, a highly influential person in one of the towns in Manipur is reportedly, and this is information with the intelligence unit as well, reportedly stashed money into boxes, and those boxes were sent to Imphal. This person is highly influential politically and when it comes to the groups that are there in Manipur. You had sporadic incidents happening, like the burning of the police station. And then you had the flare-up that happened on May 3rd. Now, there are many colors given to what has happened. But the real color or the real truth is that someone ignited the mob, a mob which you could not differentiate who the mob was at that point of time. And they were on a rampage. When I went to Manipur the first time, and I started to get deep into the problem in Manipur, that is when I realized that Manipur is a very complex situation. The conflict is a very complex conflict. At the root of the conflict is the rupees 70,000 crore narcotics business, which is steadily growing up. The narcotics business in Manipur is divided into three parts. The first part is the cannabis, the cultivation of cannabis in Manipur, which constitutes about 12% of the production. The second part is the poppy cultivation, which constitutes about 35 to 36% of the cultivation. But the larger part is these synthetic drugs that are produced in Manipur. And that constitutes 51 to 53% of the production of narcotics in Manipur. The cannabis and the poppies are cultivated in the hills. The production of synthetic drugs happens in very small areas in the valley, which are controlled by the Meities Bengals. This narcotics trade is behind the entire stirring up of the conflict. Now, you need to understand why the narcotics trade get so bustling in Manipur. The conflict in Myanmar, which was predominantly producing poppy as well as synthetic drugs, was finding it difficult to survive because of the ongoing conflict. And that is why most of the production or most of the supply that is required is now originating out of Manipur. And that is when there is this huge growth of narcotics in Manipur. Now, for the narcotics to survive, land and accessibility to the borders are very important. And that is where the narcotics problem comes up. That narcotics has a motive and is stirring up the conflict, because the narcotics cartel is also controlled by the Chinese. And Chinese, through its proxies, some of the proscribed terror groups, are the ones that control the narcotics in Manipur. And when I say that they are Chinese, I mean they've been trained by PLA China. You have a group over there called PLA Manipur. You have to look at some of their intent on their own websites when they talk about keeping Manipur separate from India. It's not that only PLA Manipur is the only proscribed terror group that the Chinese are working with. You have them working with the Kuki groups as well. That's why I keep saying there is no saint in Manipur. There are only innocent victims who have become a part of this narcotics control in Manipur. And I believe that the stirring up of this conflict is a proxy war of China with Manipur, using the narcotics cartel to create instability so that infrastructure developments that are so critical to Manipur and the Northeast are stopped, or a certain amount of hindrance comes to it. Now let's come to the second aspect of the problem, which is the demographics in Manipur. Meitei population is about 52% of the population. But Meiteis live in about 11 to 12% of the land mass, which is in the valley. Nagas and Kukis constitute the rest of the population, with others such as the Gurkhas and people from other parts of India. And they are in around 90% of about 88% of the land mass that is there in Manipur. The Meitei population obviously is looking at expanding its land footprint, because they are, after all, 53% of the population. They need to grow, and they will grow. And therefore, there's long pending issue of the ST reservation has been a demand from the Meities community for a very long time. The ST reservation, which was a demand which the High Court agreed to on April 19th, as rethought its decision, was made to look as the trigger for the violence in Manipur. The decision happened on April 19th. The conflict erupted on May 3rd. The Kukis and the Nagas. The Kukis feel threatened that the people of the valley will be moving into the hills. Rightfully so, because they believe that the hills belong to them and it's their territory, because they are the tribals. It's the same thing that would have happened with the Nagas if the Kukis went into Naga territory. And that's what we saw in the war in 93-94, when the conflict erupted. And that is a problem of demographics, because if you look at Manipur in a circular form, then the innermost circle is the Meities. The outer circle is the Kukis. And the outermost circle are the Nagas. And while Kukis are the largest population, they have accessibility to the least landmass. So their demand for ST...
No, I think you meant Meities.
Meities, sorry. If you look at the circle, the inner circle is the Meitei, the outer circle is the Kuki, and the outermost circle is the Nagas. So the Meities in their demand for ST is only protecting their interest and an ability for them to grow beyond the 10 to 12% landmass that they are a part of. The third aspect, the Kukis believe that Meities coming into their territory is an infringement of their own rights. The Nagas would believe that the Kukis coming into their territory is the infringement of their own rights and their land. And using this as a backdrop, the players who wanted to set Manipur on fire lit up the conflict to turn it into what was a dormant problem 1 year back into a very active and into a very volatile conflict, which still continues even now. Having spoken to people in both communities, the first day I arrived over there, when I was in Imphal, and we drove and we faced a lot of resistance when we were traveling. We were probably, I wouldn't say probably, but to describe it, there were people with sophisticated weapons on the road in Imphal. There were cars being stopped. We were not allowed to go towards Churachandpur at that point of time. We were detained at Morang. We were told 14 times on our way to get out of the car and explain ourselves. But that was almost a year ago. Even now, it is not that safe to travel between Churachandpur and Imphal or to go to Kangpoki. They were very civil because we were media and because the people who were in my car were neither Kukis nor Meities. They were from Manipur. My team is from Manipur. So when I went and met the Meities over there, sadly that day, a family, a mother, her daughter, and 3 young children, they lost the father and that young lady lost her husband. They were shot in the morning at 3 o'clock. On the same day, I arrived and I met them. I met another family, and they were Kukis who were living in Imphal. The sister lost her brother and lost her father on the very same day. The brother was married to a lady who they were newly married for a couple of years. The husband, that man, was bludgeoned to death by a mob in front of her eyes. I met up with the MLA who was a part of the BJP, who had come into Imphal for a meeting, a Kuki MLA. And he was beaten to near death. I know a friend whose wife is a Kuki, who was put into the trunk of her car and driven away so that they wouldn't be targeted because he's not a Kuki. There are stories from the Meities community as well. People who have called me and spoken about how terrified and how horrified they've been during this time of the violence. I spoke to the girls who were stripped naked. And raped by a mob. And why were they? Because somebody using social media spread a message that a Meities woman was raped and her eyes were gouged out. And that ignited that mob to go and extract vengeance. What was the fault of those two girls? Boys they used to be, who used to play football with them, with their brothers, were a part of that mob. So there are stories across the board. Meities, Kukis, all of them suffered, and everybody will tell you their side of the story. And that is the reality of the situation in Manipur. That fire that was set in Manipur because of the narcotics lobby, because of the instability that China wanted to create, and because of our failure to be able to calm those fires down timely, has created a wedge between the people of Manipur, between the Meities and the Kukis. Thankfully, the Nagas are away. Others, it would have been an even bigger mess. There is a separation that you don't see in Manipur right now. And you cannot solve the problem unless the government comes into Manipur strongly and ensures that A, the proscribed terror groups linked to China are eradicated. There is an effort by the government on that, but it needs to intensify. Second, all weapons that exist in the valley or in the hills with the people, which were robbed, some of course come from other parts, not necessarily the ones robbed in Manipur, but there are many weapons that are being seen on the road in the hands of common people. They need to be disarmed. And third, they need to be able to sit down together with the Meities, the Kukis, the Nagas, to arrive at a solution to the conflict and not sit piecemeal. The people in Manipur, both from the Meities and the Kukis, especially the Kukis, they are not willing to even trust the leaders that they have put forward. Most of the MLAs, even from the Meitei community, are not in Manipur. They are sitting in Delhi. Some powerful MLAs are sitting in Delhi.
Savio, I have a question for you. You said that you spoke to one of the girls who was paraded naked. Did she herself tell you that she was raped? Because I'm saying, I'll tell you one comment here, very strong. Those two were never raped. Go get the medical report first. You are a liar. Let's leave with the other part. So did she say that she was raped?
Yes. She said that she was sexually abused. Well, that's what the translation was.
Was there a medical report done? Because this person claimed that no, the medical report showed nothing.
There were two girls.
Right.
There were two girls. One of them.
Well, clearly that's one aspect of it. And let's get back to the original statement you made about the pastor saying, choose wisely. I mean, I want to make sure that people understand that as much as churches were destroyed, an equal or slightly more number of temples were also destroyed.
So the Meitei community's assessment of the temples that were destroyed were 393 temples. And they had put this out in a press note around a couple of months after the violence had broken out. There were 317 churches, 393 temples that were destroyed. Like I said, many people have different versions to the stories. What was required and what is required is for an investigation to have been conducted by proper authorities to find out the truth on the ground. Like this gentleman, whoever's commented, that there is no medical report, there is nothing done. And who's going to do that? Do you think they're going to come and go to the Meitei police and expect a report to be done? That is the level of distrust. Why is it that when Rekha Sharma of the NCW came in, majority of the complaints were done by the Kukis and not by the Meities at that point of time? So we need to understand, like I said at the start of my conversation, there are no saints in Manipur. Everyone has his own story. But the real story is what is the truth on the ground. Is there a conflict? Yes. Are the communities separated in thought, not physically or demographically? The answer is yes. Is there hate being perpetrated? The answer is yes. Is there a foreign hand in the conflict in Manipur? The answer is yes. Is it narcotics? The answer is definitely yes. It is not a religious conflict. But the more the people strike at it, Sree, it will turn into a religious conflict. Because everything else is what they are talking about rather than what the real problem is in Manipur. And the real problem in Manipur is narcotics. Nobody talks about the second largest problem in Manipur, which is not being addressed also, and that's human trafficking. Child human trafficking. These are stories people don't want to talk about. There are groups in Manipur sitting between both the communities who don't believe that they belong to India. Completely controlled by the PLA. So the first step taken by the government was to come in with a strong law against the proscribed terror groups. And slowly and steadily, that's what you have to deal with. The problem really is the third one, which is the migrants or the illegal migrants. Because you have a conflict in Myanmar, you have Kuki-Chins, and sometimes even Meities moving back and forth in a porous border. There are about 4,000 and more illegal migrants in Manipur. There are about 40,000 plus in Mizoram. It is only now that the Indian government, after this conflict, has decided to strengthen the borders in those areas because they're seeing it as a problem. But those living here, the Kukis living here, who are IAS, IPS officers, who are committed to this country, they continue to remain citizens. So we must be able to distinguish between both. The illegal immigrants and those who are our citizens, they are not the same. They might be from the same clan, but they're not the same. And that is the fourth level of the problem. So when the priests or when politicians come out and talk about Manipur with an intent to polarize, with an intent to confuse, with an intent to drive further wedge, they are not solving the problem of Manipur. They are only intensifying the problem of Manipur. And social media and the amount of propaganda across is one of the main culprits of the igniting of further violence in Manipur. Whether you are a Kuki, whether you're a Meitei, whether you're a Naga, whether you're a Gurkha, if you are a citizen of this country, then you are a citizen of this country and you are an Indian. Unfortunately, many people don't think like that, Sree. They don't. And the conflict in Manipur will see further escalations as long as people keep striking. I'll give you an example. There is the hill that is a very sacred hill belonging to the Meities. Okay? A couple of months ago, a large cross got erected on this hill. Why? A sacred hill belonging to the Meities, a large cross got erected. So somebody is certainly across sides fomenting the triggers to keep that conflict burning. I'm saying it over and over again, it is not a religious conflict, but there is all probabilities that it will turn into a religious conflict. And again, when I'm saying religion, I'm saying the Nagas did not get affected. The Nagas are Christians too. Why was it only the Kukis? So there is something in all the information. And the problem really then lies with what is the way forward. And the way forward is reconciliation. But you cannot reconcile unless you get rid of the arms in Manipur. Unless you get rid of the arms. There are people in relief camps, both of the Meities and the Kukis. They are not getting the kind of medicines that they require. Because each side wants to control the parts of accessibility. If you go to Churachandpur, for example, there are relief camps out there, but you will have to, if you have to get medicine to them, they obviously can't come from Imphal. The same thing to some of the Meitei relief camps. There are no medicines. The education is slowly coming back, but it's going to take some time to be normal. So who did it benefit at all? You know, there is a saying that there is no prosthetic for an amputated soul. And in Manipur right now, there are so many amputated souls that for people to trust each other again is going to be a huge, huge problem. And therefore, the government must come down to the ground and rely on talking to the locals rather than the leaders who represent each of them, and get a feel of the problems at a ground level, because you can solve this problem. At the heart of it, both Meities, Kukis are not bad people. They've been forced into getting into this conflict because somebody has set it on fire. And that somebody is for the government of India to investigate and take action.
So we've talked about the actual problem, but there is another aspect to this, and this is something that is somewhat of a political in nature, that there are people who are trying to fortify their positions and also weaken the other positions of multiple stakeholders that are trying to be involved in this. And I have heard this thing, I don't know how true this is, Savio, because I had a friend who had to fly out of Imphal to come to Kolkata before he would even open his mouth, because he said, I was in danger from both sides, because both sides knew what I knew, and I couldn't dare open my mouth. I couldn't even make a phone call to you from Imphal. So he came out to Kolkata and he told me a few things. Unfortunately, I don't have a way to verify what he was saying, but clearly one of the things that he was saying was that inside the BJP, there are factions who are trying to jostle, and that's also one of the things, is that this particular issue has been made to fester for some time because it looks bad on one person. But I have one question that perhaps the BJP government of Manipur can answer. You destroyed the opium crop and the cannabis crop. Great. So only half of the crop is destroyed. What about the remaining? What about the synthetic drugs? Fentanyl is 10 times or 1,000 times more dangerous than opium and cannabis. What is your plan on that? Why have you not said anything about it? Drug peddlers will seed everybody, every party, right? I mean, that is way of doing business. So there is something more that is going on than meets the eye. Savio, if you have some light on this, please let us know. I know it's a little sensitive. At the same time, I just have heard some things and I want to put it out there.
See, right now at this point of time, what really seems to be the trigger is the government's focus on narcotics, and they want to deal with it. But they need to deal with it holistically. Like I said earlier, the narcotics is not only opium and poppy and cannabis, it's also the synthetic drugs. I can tell you that when the Myanmar violence started and the conflict started, it is Tamil Nadu that's supplying chemicals to the factories in Manipur to process these synthetic drugs, and that was probably one of the reasons why DMK had opened them out during the conflict as far as Manipur was concerned. The problem is information flow, Sree. The information flow is coming sporadically, and it's coming through different means, and it's not able to be clubbed together to analyze what is the problem on the ground. For a very long time, even I was very confused on what was going on there till I went first time and the second time as well. where I was able to make, I'm still trying to make sense of it. I keep getting lots of calls from different people from different communities saying different things at different times. But the reality on the ground is that there's a separation, and narcotics is a problem in that area because there was a lot of supplies that were going out and out. And for that, you require the border areas, you require the access points to go out. And those control lies with the people who are politically connected and people who are with the authorities. So what you do have is a nexus of narcotics, political leaders, and some people in the authorities that are really playing the game. And then you have the main player on the top who's watching the proxy war going on because he's funding the proscribed terror groups and the other groups who actually go about doing what they are doing. Now, I don't expect people to accept what I'm saying. I'm going to get a lot of people from both sides who are going to come. And that's what I experienced over the last 1 year when I've been going and coming back and reporting. But what is the truth? It's like I explained to a priest who was raising the issue of Manipur. I said, listen, Father, let me give you an example. Father Robin in Kerala was accused of raping a minor girl of 16 years in 2016. And such was the power of the influence of Father Robin and certain members of the church, including some nuns, that the father of the girl went and gave a testimony that he raped his daughter till the truth actually came out. And in 2019, Father Robin was sentenced to 20 years rigorous imprisonment by a court in Kerala. So I asked the priest, in such a situation, do you blame the father, Robin? Do you blame the cardinals, the bishops of that area? Or do you blame Pope Francis? The priest did not give me an answer. He said I was trying to confuse the situation. I said the logic is the same. Who do you put the blame on when a crime has taken place? It's the same thing in Manipur as well. Now let me explain what I'm saying. The situation in Manipur is that of a parent having two children not getting along together and now fighting with each other and brutally fighting with each other. There is a babysitter who's kept in charge of looking after the children. The babysitter, for known or unknown reasons, favors one child over the other. And these kids continue to fight, hurt each other, scratch each other, and drift apart. That is exactly the situation in Manipur and the Indian government. That, do you leave the children to solve the problem after they are tired of having their sibling rivalry take this route of separation? Or do you step in and whip both the children and tell them to behave themselves? And that was the problem that happened in Manipur. Because if you take the second route, you would have what happened in Mizoram during the Congress government. Because both are yours. So it's a very delicate matter when people tell me and say, okay, the BJP government has failed in Manipur. At least the center. They keep saying Modi has failed. What does a parent do when two children do not want to come together and are fighting with each other, and the babysitter who's put in charge is not playing fair, looking after the kids? then the parent has two options: to streamline or straighten the babysitter first, and then straighten the kids out simultaneously, or change the babysitter. These are options available to the government, but the parent needs to understand that at some point of time, the conflict, that anger between the two children will lead to such hate that they might injure themselves so badly. They might have a broken hand, a broken leg, an eye poked. Then what would the parent do at that point of time? It's better to prevent than to cure.
Thank you, Savio. Lot to ponder here. I think he is giving a lot of hints for those who understand. They know what is going wrong. And I think we have covered 100% of the issue that is at hand. Clearly, the government, that is Indian government, whether it is the center or the state, they have not talked about this hidden hand, which has now come out. And that is the way, that's where the root of the problem is. And you brought up an excellent point about DMK complaining about what was happening in Manipur. DMK is in a deep excrement of its own, and it's stinking to high heaven. And now that the elections are over, for that area at least, I'm sure that something is going to happen there. Anyway, we'll wait and see. But thank you so much, Savio. This is not something that was created in one day, and it's not going to go away in one day. It's been building up for a while, and that's the takeaway here. But remember, all Christian brothers and sisters, 317 churches burnt, 392 temples destroyed. This is not a religious right.
Sree, I just want to give a message to the people in Manipur and the rest of India. You know, you could sit in your homes and pontificate about everything going right or wrong in Manipur and use it for your own political or religious agenda. But it's those people on the ground, in the Meities and the Kuki community, the innocent people. The first casualty of any conflict is innocence. Their lives are not meant to be played with. There are people who are dying in the relief camps. There are people who don't have medicines in the relief camps. There are diabetics who don't have diabetic medicines over there. This is not a game. This is life of innocent people. People who had nothing to do with the conflict, who were victimized because of that conflict across communities. So pray for them. Because what you require is a hand of God to heal them. And whichever religion you come from. Because it requires healing, it requires prayers, it requires people to understand, not further fuel the hatred.
Thank you so much, Savio, and thank you, 𝗤𝙧𝙤𝙪. You've become a member of PGurus channel, and basically we don't have any questions from our viewers, but they're just making some observations. I think what we have done is we have tried to lay it out the way it is today, and with more skirmishes happening in Myanmar, more tough battles happening there, expect more turbulence here too. But I would like the Manipur government first, and then perhaps the Home Ministry in New Delhi, clarify what is happening with the synthetic drug production, and that give us the full thing rather than us making some speculations or what is going on here, what could be going on there. So that would be highly appreciated. In the meantime, all the innocents, stay calm. Please don't foment any new trouble. Things are settling down. It takes time, and clearly there is some correction needed. Babysitter needs to go, and we'll see what the father or the parents decide to do. Thank you so much, Savio. Namaskar.
Namaskar.